Now we have a very exciting announcement. We're going to turn it over to Civic Genius and YOUnify with a Y, not a U. But we also have Jeff Silvestrini, the mayor of Millcreek, is live joining us here.
My name is Jillian Youngblood. I'm the executive director of Civic Genius. I'm here with my dear friend and colleague and partner, Brandyn Keating. We are partnering together using our 20 years each of experience, designing different deliberative and public engagement processes, designing a citizen assembly in Millcreek, Utah. You'll hear from the mayor in just a moment. Both of our organizations, I think there's a little bit of a false dichotomy of national organizations versus local organizations. We are both, Civic Genius and YOUnify, are national organizations that rely and work with, collaborate fully with local communities. So everything we do is in partnership with local communities. Can you hear me? Am I in that? Okay. So we co-designed this process adhering to the global standards for citizen assemblies that you have heard a lot about over the past few days, that we have studied extensively, but evolving those and adapting them specifically for the US context. We're inviting input, actually, in this conversation from you all as we talk about our model. We talk a lot about modeling healthy collaboration. We are basically common law married at this point because we collaborate so deeply. So as we go through this, would love to have you all thinking about what you think about adapting this to the US context. So we are in... I would like to welcome you all to the Mountain West paradise of Millcreek, Utah. It's a really interesting place in that it is representative of a lot of places in the US. It's really a microcosm of what we see across the country. People are disconnected from one another. People are disconnected from their government, both at the local or triply at the local, state, and national level. Politically, it's pretty purple. So there's a lot of ideological diversity, lot of nuance to the politics there. There's also quite a bit of population growth, and that is diversifying the area in terms of race, ethnicity, income, religion, et cetera. And we're also seeing that population growth put some pressure on public resources in a way that can become contentious and divisive. I feel like we're defense attorneys defending our client.
So as we walk through the presentation today, part of our goal here is to share with you the key elements of our process. We are at the beginning of our learning journey. This citizen assembly is meant to take place in 2024, nested within our long-term model for community engagement that includes a deep grassroots relational organizing model, which is rooted in behavioral science and cross-sector stakeholder engagement, as well as capacity building for other partners and organizations. As Jillian mentioned, the sort of local-national dichotomy doesn't really apply to us particularly well. In Mill Creek City and in 40 US states and 7 countries, we are constituted by our on-the-ground members who are nationally and globally networked. And in each location that we hold something like a citizen assembly, that assembly sits within a larger arc of long-term engagement that is focused on building long-term civic muscle, and the idea that these are not one and done events, but rather they become part of the fiber of the community's civic life. So with that in mind, as we seek to model healthy collaboration, it's not just between our 2 organizations, it's also with our other local and national partners, which vary from location to location. Our goal is to learn deeply with our partners. We all know, and I think there was some talk about how do we get these things funded yesterday, that there are a lot of unintentional incentives driven in the sort of nonprofit philanthropic world for cannibalization rather than cooperation or collaboration. So we very intentionally are sort of swimming upstream against those incentives, as I'm sure many of you are seeking to do here, and as I know Marjan and Fide are seeking to do in modeling and helping us all with that challenge. I think sometimes those incentives cause us to look at our interventions as silver bullets or talk about them or feel pressure to talk about them as silver bullets. We are very focused on on the opposite approach, that we are focused on what can we actually learn and developing a learning community among the different locations in which we do our assemblies. We seek to add 5 more to our roster that Millcreek is leading on in this coming year. We are also a little bit obsessed with measuring impact as a way of both supporting that learning and respecting the local community and participants, honoring their time by ensuring that we are using and developing new evidence-based practices. And while we will likely do some measurement that focuses on the specific intervention and its immediate impact, we also are very interested in moving upstream of the immediate effect of one intervention and looking at how that intervention nested within the larger program creates impact on human flourishing, working with our friends at the Harvard Human Flourishing Program, and hopefully as well on belonging, integrating the belonging barometer. We've been so honored and delighted to be able to partner in with Mayor Silvestrini of Millcreek City and his city council. And even more delighted, you know, having had our local members really sort of foment and ask for this sort of thing, even more delighted that when we gave Mayor Silvestrini and the city council the option of, you know, there's one end on which you could kind of give us some initial wants and kind of let us take the ball and run with it in terms of how deeply you would like to be engaged. And at the other end of the spectrum, you could really like roll up your sleeves and co-design with us and be very integrated in that process all along the way. And it's been just such a wonderful experience to have the mayor and the city council lean fully in, meeting with us regularly and helping adapt the design actively to Millcreek City. So I believe we have Mayor Silvestrini here on Zoom, who is joining us from another conference in Utah. So thank you so much for taking a break from your other conference.
Thank you, Brandon. Can you guys hear me?
And joining us here. The floor is yours, and we'd love to hear from you a little bit about why you gave us such a robust yes to partnering in and formally responding to the results of the Citizen Assembly.
Okay, my pleasure. Can you hear me?
Yes, beautifully.
Okay, awesome. So first, I actually came home from my other conference yesterday evening, so I'm in my office, and I apologize that I'm wearing my bicycle clothes, but the Salt Lake City Marathon is today, and it crosses my city in 2 different locations, so really the only way to get around. They won't let you drive a car on the route, so I rode my bike and sneaked across. So anyway, I'm the mayor of Millcreek. I'm in my 3rd term. And where is Millcreek, Utah? You know, what kind of city are we? We are a city of 65,000 residents. We are located immediately south of Salt Lake City. So we have our longest boundary is with Salt Lake, and we have boundaries with like 4 other cities, actually 5 other cities in the Salt Lake Valley. Our city is an old new city. Our area was settled when you know, by you know, white settlers, I guess I would say. You know, indigenous people were here for centuries, obviously, but this place was colonized by Mormon pioneers who arrived in 1847, and Millcreek was the first actual settlement outside of Utah Fort, which is where the pioneers initially founded Salt Lake City. My city was founded because we are blessed to have a pretty powerful creek that runs out of the Wasatch Range through our city called Millcreek, our namesake. And there were mills built on that. There were 7 different mills that ground flour, sawed lumber, and things like that. However, we did not incorporate until 7 years ago, in late 2016, actually December of 2016. So that kind of doesn't count. our city is really pretty ethnically diverse. We have, I think, like many communities, an affluent east side that borders the mountains that actually has some of the most wealthy people in our state that live there. We also have a robust immigrant and refugee community. Utah has always been welcoming to refugees, and we have elementary schools where 27 languages are spoken, 2 Title I elementary schools on our west side. So one of the challenges that we had when we incorporated is to try to bridge divides and unify our community and build a sense of place, build a sense of community for folks that had been kind of fiercely unincorporated for years before this, for decades, centuries before this, right? So I got approached by John Kessler, who's a local resident who's affiliated with YOUnify, and to talk about this idea. We're all in on that because our interest is in, obviously, as a newer city government, and we're interested in knowing what our residents think. We're interested in being responsive to them. I'm also interested in trying to engage people who typically are not engaged with the political system or municipal government or things like that. And that is particularly true with this immigrant refugee community, because not only is there a socioeconomic barrier where they can't always take time to come to community meetings and things like that. Some of them don't have the facilities even to participate with us on the internet. We stream everything and allow people to participate in our meetings online. But even then, it's difficult for them because of their need to work different jobs and things like that. And then there's also language barriers. So I'm actually hopeful that we can learn from this experience. And the reason why I think my council is involved in this is so much is we like the idea. It's intriguing, and we want to help shape this, because we actually are hoping to get something out of it for our city council in terms of policy direction from people who don't get heard very often. And so, there are a lot of issues that could be discussed in our community, some of which we have little control over. So rather than dealing with a national or international issue, certainly it'd be interesting, and I'd be curious to know what our residents think about those things. But I'm more interested in knowing what they think needs to be done in our city, where we are, falling short, where we can do better, things like that. Utah has been the fastest growing state in the country over the past 10 years. And our population is forecast to double in the next 30 years, which is kind of shocking. And accommodating that growth is a huge challenge for a municipal government. We have a housing shortage, which I think everybody in the country has a housing shortage, right? And it's driving up housing prices to the point of where housing is becoming unaffordable for many people, including our kids and our grandkids. Most of Utah's growth is that. About a third to a half of it is folks moving in because our economy has been good, and we live in a beautiful environment here. If you've ever been here, you know what I'm talking about. So that growth challenge is also affecting people. Folks in this suburban community are concerned about the fact that we are densifying, and they're seeing, larger apartment buildings, going in. We're built out, so the choice of growth is actually to go vertical, and that freaks people out, and folks are concerned about traffic. We have an air quality issue in Utah with the fact that we're ringed by mountains, so we are the victims of temperature inversions, which make our air quality challenging. And then we also have this kind of existential challenge with the climate changing and the Great Salt Lake evaporating further. And the risk of that is not only is it an environmental catastrophe if it dries up for hundreds of species of migratory birds that shelter there, but it's also could create a dust bowl here if the dust from that lake bed blows into our community, and that dust carries all kinds of toxic metals that have been washed out of the mountains over the years. So there's all kinds of nasty stuff in there that we don't want to be breathing. So those are the kinds of issues we want to figure out. Cities can deal with that in Utah by promoting water conservation and getting more water into the Great Salt Lake. So there are lots of issues to discuss, and we're hopeful that in this partnership with YOUnify that we will find something that our community can talk about and that we'll learn from that. So that's why we're excited about it. I think it's intriguing, as an elected official, some folks may not believe that we want to listen to people, but especially at the local level where we affect people's lives more than other levels of government, we are more responsive and we do want to know where our residents are. And that's, it's not just a political survival, because I care less about that than advancing the interest of my community and making sure that that we're doing a good job for our residents and improving their quality of life as we grow.
We're really grateful to you for spending some of your Saturday with us, and what an emblematic leader you are. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The mayor and the council in Millcreek are such an incredible example of something that we know to be true, but I think it's lost in a lot of the advocacy, at least in the US, for deliberative democracy and citizen assemblies. It kind of turns into this adversarial conversation that we need to go browbeat the elected officials to listen to the people and do the right thing. But as you've heard, Mayor Silvestrini and his colleagues are among many, many elected officials, especially at the local level across the country, who very genuinely want to know what their constituents think. And because both YOUnify and Civic Genius work in communities long-term and very deeply, and all of our work is local and collaborative, we are able to just have those conversations in a more natural way, where we can show that a citizen assembly is solving a problem that we know they have, instead of saying you're doing a terrible job, you should let the people do your job instead. So I'll just really quickly run through, you've heard a lot about the collaboration and the design there. The goals of this collaborative design, we care intensely, as everyone here does, about making this process truly accessible. So I think we spend a lot of time in this country flogging people for doing a bad job and not participating in processes that are designed to repel them in many cases. So as we think about the time of day, the location, is this on a college campus where the map is confusing and it doesn't naturally feel like you would go? We're really thoughtful about exactly where these kinds of things happen. What is the schedule? Does it fit into the schedule of a working person, of a person who's doing caretaking? All of these things that you want to control for. We want to maximize participation from every segment of the community. We also spend a lot of time making sure that the content is culturally competent, it is accessible and easy to understand. I know a lot of this stuff can get technical, but it doesn't really need to be that way. I think a core competency of our team is that we have communications backgrounds, marketing backgrounds. Everything we do is based in brain and behavioral science. We have a unique grassroots model that enables us to adapt that content to the community that we're in. It is genuinely fun and engaging. I'll just say that. We've done a lot of experimentation, making sure that people actually want to come to these things and tell their neighbors. And as I mentioned earlier, we are very much relying on the standard practices globally for citizen assemblies, but we are doing a lot of iteration and innovation in terms of how those play out locally, and doing that with members of the community.
And we do have representation both globally and nationally and locally on our advisory board, and we're delighted that Marjan has become part of that. The last two things that I'll quickly mention and then end with a question for all of you are that we are working to engage technology. I was delighted to hear about what Harry is working on, to really make sure that we can engage the maximum number of citizens possible at every step of the way, and that includes not just the assembly members, but how we create a feedback loop to the broader community, both on the front end and on the back end. So one of the things that we're working on is creative engagement of AI. I don't know about y'all, but I have been personally a little bit terrified about AI. And one of the things that's helping to quell that terror is the idea that if we think that we are using AI as a tool, it is actually using us. However, we can transform our relationship to AI and utilize it for civic engagement by not thinking of it as a tool, but thinking of it as a relationship. So we have a whole tranche of work that we are doing on that to help accelerate learning. We also are looking at engaging chatbot technology. We've done this before, both to reduce affective polarization. We created an intervention that was one of the winners of the Stanford and MIT Strengthening Democracy Challenge because it was shown to reduce affective polarization. And we've also used chatbot technology in order to reach hard to reach populations. So as we think about the degree to which people use or don't use mail, we want to make sure that we are evolving our outreach mechanisms both to deeply honor and adhere to a rigorous sortition process and to engage these new technologies in such a way that is consistent with those standards and helps adapt them for this century and the century to come. So we really invite, as we are at the beginning of this journey, all of your input as to how we can maintain this balance and your creative ideas and practices about engaging technology while staying true to those standards. Thank you so much for your time and attention.